Good morning. We gather here in the faith of life everlasting to thank our God for our friend and Christian sibling, Marilyn Cleveland. We are also here to seek God's comfort for ourselves, and especially for those who knew and loved Marilyn best and will therefore miss her the most. This family is so thankful that you have all come together for this occasion. They extend a warm invitation for lunch following the service in the parish house. And there's also a guest book in the parish house if you'd like to sign that when you're back there. Beloved, the eternal God is our dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. The same one assures us that blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Therefore, let us enter into this holy time of worship and remember God's eternal promises and everlasting love. Let us join in the call to worship. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. Let us join together in prayer. Holy One, that is closer to us than our own breath, we know that there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. We've heard the scripture before. We lived it out in our lives. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Remind us of this truth here and now, in this moment of weeping and grief, in this moment of honoring and celebrating life. Remind us that in every season you are with us. We are not alone. May your comfort and peace fall upon us now as we journey this new season of life. Amen. Our first hymn is number 649, Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Please be seated.
This is from Wendell Berry, one of Marilyn's favorite. Nothing, having arrived, will stay. The earth even is like a flower, so soon passeth it away. And yet this nothing is the seed of all, the clear eye, a clear eye of heaven, where all the worlds appear. Where the imperfect has departed, the perfect begins its struggle to return. The good gift begins again its descent. The Maker moves in the unmade, stirring the water until its clouds, dark beneath the surface, stirring and darkening the soul until pain perceives new possibilities. There is nothing to do but learn and wait, return to work on what remains. Seed will sprout in the scar. Though death is in the healing, it will heal.
This is from Matthew 6:19 to 21. Do not store up for yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
Please be seated. We turn now to a time of remembrances shared by the family and friends. Would you rather use the traveling?
We can do it. Start this way.
Would you rather have the traveling mic?
I'm fine, but
Okay.
other people might want it. So there is a mic wandering around the room somewhere. So one of the ushers will bring it to you if you'd rather say something from your seat. You don't have to come up here. It's a moving tribute to Marilyn that all you people have turned out for her memorial service. It's true. I want to take a picture, and you have my deep thanks. David. I haven't seen David, but anyway, I think he was coming. David knew her in her childhood in River Edge, flew in from Seattle just for this. Is David here? Maybe he didn't make it. Okay. Some of her caregivers who saw her through the last 2 years of life, and especially the last 6 months when she was bedbound at home and then in hospice, are here. I saw them before. Between those two bookends, her life was long, 85 years, rich and complex. Many other areas are represented here by you folks and by those who couldn't make it. We have friends from this church, past and present, friends from the co-op and Fibercraft and the Threefold community in Spring Valley, and I guess I'll catch up with you at the reception later. Friends from her work to found and sustain alternative schools, nursery schools and otherwise. Friends from her love of gardening, friends from healing communities, and relatives from all over. She retired from working as a recreation therapist at the Rockland Children's Psychiatric Center over 25 years ago, and we lost track of most of them. But one of them, who couldn't be here, wrote that she was, quote, a special friend, one of the kindest, that is, Marilyn was a special friend to her, one of the kindest, gentlest person I have ever met. Another coworker in her early days at RCPC said, while I was technically her boss, the reality is that I looked to her for guidance and support. Your mother took me under her wing and in her very nurturing way taught me what I needed to know about human nature, leadership styles, problem solving, and more. She also acted as a big sister who would listen and just be there. I really don't think I would be here today, be where I am today, if Marilyn had not come into my life during those formative years. Today, that's Laura Kelly. She's the governor of Kansas now. As most of you know, Marilyn was not a party girl. She was serious about most things, a truth teller, as some have said. She also loved generously, I'm going to break up, and trusted deeply. She was brave and courageous. And now I can just hear her saying, could you be more specific? What did she do? So let's go back to her childhood, as she and I were fond of doing, both of us being psychologists by training. Her childhood was very hard, harder than most of us experience. Everybody has a hard childhood, I think, but she more than most. Her family moved from the Bronx to a new house in River Edge, New Jersey, when she was a toddler. She had a congenital deformity that made it hard to walk normally, spina bifida, in spite of multiple operations on her legs. Her father was seriously ill for years in an era with poor health insurance. Her mother got a job, and at the same time when most white women did not work. Her father died when she was 12. The family, including a sister and two sisters and a brother, got by with welfare, Social Security survivor benefits, gifts from a wealthy relative, and through sharing their house with 4 adult relatives. It was crowded. Sounded like a zoo. Eventually, the relatives moved out. Marilyn babysat and worked hard in school. She found love and acceptance from her siblings, the families for whom she babysat, and at church. She decided to become a recreation therapist. It's easy to imagine that she wanted to help people like herself, to spare them the insults and microaggressions she knew all too well. She often said that she thought she had learned everything she knew by the age of 12. I think she meant that she knew by then the emotional landscape that life would offer her and had found her ways of dealing with it. She loved plain and simple things and the out of doors. She loved, just a minute. She loved sitting in the front yard and weeding and knew every kind of grass we had in that yard. Eventually it was only one kind because she pulled out everything else, but she knew what she was pulling out and what to leave. She took enough courses from Cornell Cooperative Extension in the county that she became a master gardener. She had a black and white, simple lifestyle calendar in the kitchen from Appalachia Science in the public interest, ASPI. She supported tuition-free Berea College in Kentucky, the first integrated and co-educational college in the South. We honeymooned in West Virginia at Holly River State Park. We marched against the war in Vietnam, and for other reasons as well that escape me at the moment. In fact, right now, at noon, there is a demonstration at the corner of Route 59 and Middletown Road in the county, where all these demonstrations often happen. And this one is against the Musk-Trump administration. So if anybody wants to leave a little early to get there, you're welcome to do that. I would be there if we didn't have this thing today. She loved biking and walking on the Piermont Pier. She valued plain speaking, as the Quakers call it. Her clothes were comfortable and colorful. She wore a black and red plaid jacket, even at the risk of being mistaken for a man. I was going to bring it this morning, but I forgot, so I could put it on. But clerks would say to her, "What can I do for you, sir?" And she would say, "I'd like one of those." And they would back off and change their demeanor. She even liked the way I dress, and did dress when we were undergraduates. I wore green corduroy pants, which she was somehow fond of. Nobody else did that, but she would often come and visit me in my back study, and she noticed the pants. She was someone I relied on for social judgment. She loved children, was a feminist, and among the first subscribers to Ms. Magazine. When we were courting, we spent hours talking about Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex, which still must be a good book, and how we would raise children. When I think about her now, yes, I can't help but think of Homer and Jethro's country song. You may know it. I've got tears in my ears from lying on my back in my bed while I cry over you. It's a kind of novelty song, but the lyrics just strike me as apropos, because I certainly have done that lately. Let me close with a passage from Jayber Crow by Wendell Berry, a book that she has reread 4 or 5 times. I think it captures where she'd like to be. Everything there seemed to belong where it was. That was why I went there. Do you want to read this? Okay, it's right here, yeah. Okay.
Everything there seemed to belong where it was. That was why I went there. And I went to feel the change that place always made in me. Always, as soon as I came in under the big trees, I began to go slowly and quietly. This was not because I was hunting. I hunted in other places. But because in a place where everything belongs, where it is, you do not want to disturb anything. I went slowly and quietly. I watched where I put my feet. I went for solace and comfort, for a certain quietness of mind that came to me in no other place. Even the nettles and mosquitoes comforted me, for they belonged where they were.
Hi, everybody. Dear Mom, you were tall and beautiful. You had big hands and long arms. You wore socks and sandals year-round. You washed the dishes in a relaxed and unhurried way. You sat at the top of the stairs at bedtime and read aloud the little house books. I loved your cold nose in my eye when you tucked me in. You patched and changed the tires on our bikes. You got us giant inner tubes to horse around in at Seth's Pond. You made caramel corn at Christmas time for us and everybody at work, including the janitor. You sent me letters, recipes and valentines until you couldn't anymore. You scooted along in my front yard, edging the garden and pulling weeds. You rode your bike alongside me as I walked with Rosie on the sidewalk. You said, "What's for supper?" thinking out loud every evening. Sahara and I chose our dog Claire because she was born on your birthday. You thought about my worries with compassion and kindness. You said, "Maybe it's already okay," when I didn't know what to do. You sent me plume poppies from Fiddlehead Farm and seeds from your garden. You and Dad drove to from Pearl River to Ann Arbor often with a car full of goodies, quesadillas for Pradeep, stilts, a hoppity-hop, yarn, and knitting needles for Sahara, and such love. You'd call from the rest stop on 23 to let us know you were almost here. Sahara and I would come outside and wait on the sidewalk until we saw the Subaru rumbling up Fountain Street. What an incredible thrill it was every time. You'd say, "Hiya, sweetie," and "So good to see you, Pradeep," with your clear, gentle voice. You told the truth and made space for others to do the same. You enjoyed the red Volvo and kept it clean and well-tuned. You could gauge the outside temperature by looking at the rhododendron out your bedroom window and noticing how the leaves curled. You loved Pradeep and asked him welcoming, thoughtful questions. You counted on Dad, and he relied on you. You listened to Sahara with great love play the recorder over the phone in 5th grade while I took a nap. You steadfastly took lots and lots of vitamins. You used deodorant for baking. You used baking soda for deodorant. You relished a cone of 3 Twins cardamom ice cream. You did your exercises on the mat in the living room and tended to your hard-working toes. You said, "Dream of a happy sunny day tomorrow at bedtime." You watched TV with Dad when the day was done, as you guys grew old together. You had gratitude for many things. You thanked Margarita for adjusting your bed and for helping you with sips of strawberry banana smoothie. You asked me if I had enough blankets as I lay next to you toward the end. You cared for yourself and others day after day, year after year, with incredible grace, kindness, and determination until the end of your very long, beautiful, extraordinary life. You loved us all fiercely. Thanks be, dear Mom. Thanks be, as you used to say. Love you very much. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I think we're all going to say the same things about our mom, but in our own voices, so they'll hear a lot of repetition. I'd like to thank everyone here today, friends and family who have come from all ages and stages of my mom's life, from her sister, my Aunt Meg, to the sisterhood of devoted caregivers who supported my mom and us in the last few years of her life. Thank you all for coming to remember and celebrate my mother's life. I'd also like to honor the memory of my mother's oldest sister, my Aunt Carol, who predeceased my mother by less than a year. When my mom became bedbound this past summer and began to have confusion and delusion about where she was, she once called out, "Carol, get me out of this wheelbarrow." I'd like to think that indeed Carol has helped my mother's spirit out of the wheelbarrow of her confined body, and that they are reunited in a joyful and mysterious way. I'd like to share some of my memories and impressions of my mom, what she modeled and instilled in me, what I am grateful for, and end with a poem. As I wrote down these thoughts, I realized they fell into some loose categories, so I've given headings to each of these aspects of her life. Self-care. My mom had a lot of difficulty in life with her body, which you've already heard about, but nonetheless modeled diligent and devoted self-care. She was born with a mild form of spina bifida and a tethered spinal cord, which resulted in loss of some nerve-to-muscle connection in her feet and legs. This led to multiple surgeries and braces as a child to help her walk better. In her late 50s, she developed breast cancer, and largely as a result of treatment for that cancer, developed multiple chemical sensitivity, or MCS. She was, as one of her favorite neurologists said to her with kindness, a delicate flower. All these conditions contributed to her self-image, her struggles in life, her understanding of the world, and her determined and remarkable survival as well. My mom was tall and walked with her signature lifting foot gait. A mutual friend described her as a gentle grasshopper. My mom would marvel that we, her 3 daughters, could all wiggle our toes and ice skate, things she could never do. Her feet and body required special care. She was so grateful for a local podiatrist. It's actually Daniel Bieber's grandfather, who's here playing the bass, who introduced her to little toe caps to protect her claw-like toes from becoming hurt while walking. Because she could not fit into standard feminine fashion with her uncooperative feet, she found her own style based on comfortable clothing, cotton flowing pants with elastic waists, simple cotton shirts and sweaters or vests, and her signature socks and sandals to accommodate her feet and make room for those toe caps, plain and simple, defying convention to allow herself to be more comfortable. For as long as I can remember, my mom would always spend time daily in the morning and evening stretching out her tense muscles and performing physical therapy exercises to keep her body going as long as it could. We kids would laugh when she did the yoga lion pose with her tongue sticking out and her eyes opened wide. She knew she looked funny and exaggerated the pose to make us laugh more. When she developed MCS, she diligently followed up on saunas and supplements to help her body detoxify, switched to an organic diet, and shared what she was learning about reducing our exposure to harmful chemicals by producing a short newsletter illustrated by my sister Kate, playfully titled BYO EPA, or Be Your Own Environmental Protection Agency. She took her individual suffering and related it to the larger world, giving her struggles meaning and helping others to connect on these issues. My mom loved to swim. I think the water gave her a buoyancy which allowed her body to feel more graceful. After she could no longer tolerate chlorine in local swimming pools due to her MCS, she and my dad would drive up to Lake Tiarati almost daily in the summer to swim. My sister Kate made a beautiful graphic book a few years ago celebrating my mother's love of water, which you can see on the table in the back after the service. Heart and hands. My mom found centering and grounding using her hands to make and to mend, darning socks, patching pants and shirt elbows, sewing clothes for our dolls and stuffed animals, gardening, making pottery for our kitchen, cooking meals and making lunches for school, and later in life when we kids had moved out, exploring art therapy with Sister Bridge, and discovering natural wool dyeing and weaving at the Fibercraft Studio. She probably spent hundreds of hours of her life, if not thousands, scooching around the yard on a cushion, pulling up weeds from the grass and gardens, and tending to the flowers she loved to grow. In these many creative and embodied activities, she united heart and hands. Often before a large family meal, she would lead a blessing by thanking the 50-plus hands that brought this food to our table. Just so, she recognized the value of children's embodied creative play, and our childhood home was full of games and crafts and toys to occupy our hands and nurture our creative spirits. In her job as a recreational therapist at Rockland Children's Psychiatric Center, my mom worked to help children find their own centering and grounding, using their hands to make crafts such as friendship bracelets and playing organized games inside and out. I remember she said that when she interviewed for the job, she was offered a choice between two positions and took the recreational therapist position because that would allow her to be outside more. I believe she found her calling there, helping distressed kids feel productive and purposeful, using their hands, and helping their hearts feel more at ease. Questioning and seeking. Growing up in the 1970s, in the circles we traveled among, we would often see a bumper sticker that said, "Question authority." My mom taught me by example that it is okay and even necessary to question authority and to seek a more true and authentic way for ourselves. She knew from her own life experience that those in positions of authority do not always have the answers or have our best interests at heart and cannot decide for us what is best, and that we must consult our own inner guidance. She knew that life takes courage to live, and importantly, validated for me that I was courageous in my own quiet ways to swim against the tide at times. In the sphere of education, her questioning spirit led her to seek out and help create alternative education options for her children, the Paul Goodman School in East Lansing and the Rockland Project School here in Valley Cottage, schools which honored the wholeness of children. It was so important to my mom that we were treated by our teachers with kindness and respect. Some of our beloved teachers and parents and students from the Rockland Project School are here today. In the sphere of healthcare, my mom discovered the limitations of conventional medicine, particularly when she developed multiple chemical sensitivity, and she embraced alternative healing modalities, including acupuncture, homeopathy, and anthroposophic medicine. She was so grateful for health professionals who saw and honored her wholeness. In religion, while she valued and attended church all her life, she also sought out non-traditional ways to name and connect with spirit, particularly with other women. For many years, she was part of the Sophia Group, a gathering of local women friends who together celebrated women's spirituality. Some of those friends are here today as well. She was both skeptical about anything dogmatic and open-minded about things of the spirit. She appreciated my immersion in Buddhism in my early 20s, and for many years gave annual donations to the Buddhist retreat center I had attended, recognizing its great value not only for me, but to so many others as well. Worry and grace. My mom was known as a worrier. She worried about her adult kids making it home safely after a visit. She worried about natural disasters and gave us lists of items we should have at the ready in case of emergency. She worried about the innumerable community and global threats we all face. She saw clearly the destructive forces at work in the world, some personal and some global, and sought earnestly to protect herself, her family, and the planet from these forces as best she could. Her worry spurred her to action. She attended rallies and meetings to protest the nuclear arms race in the 1980s, and later sent out her BYO EPA newsletter to warn people about the hidden harms in our daily household products. And she donated to many organizations that seek to protect the vulnerable and restore the earth. Maybe because of her keen awareness of her own and our collective vulnerability, she was also keenly aware of grace and kindness. She was deeply touched by those who showed her kindness in life, from her beloved Uncle Herb to the sturdy young EMS folks who picked her up off the floor when she fell in the house and could not get herself up again. She was so grateful for the kindnesses shown to her by her caregivers in these last difficult years. By extension, she was deeply kind herself. Many friends and relatives have recently shared memories of my mom using the words kind and wise. She knew there was grace in the world, despite all there is to worry about, and had intimations that there was amazing grace not of this world as well. I am forever grateful that my mom told me about 2 times she was visited by angels as a child. These angelic visitations happened fleetingly during very difficult times when she was a girl. One was by the school water fountain, she said. Another was seen from the car window in a front yard as they drove by. The messages these visitations conveyed was that, despite all evidence to the contrary, she would be all right. All would be well. What a gift and what a grace. In her last month of life, in one of her more lucid moments, she said, tearfully, that she didn't want to leave, that she wanted to stay. She said in her limited ability to speak at that point, "It's been awful, but then it got good." She had suffered a lot in this life, and there had been a lot to worry about and fear, but also a lot to be grateful for. That's a deep grace. I am forever encouraged that my mom showed me in her dying process about the way we, as spiritual beings, are like homing pigeons, finding our way back to an ultimate home after life in this body has worn out. As commonly happens for the dying, in her last months of life, my mom had many dreams and confused certainty that she was preparing for a trip. Sometimes she said she had been at the train station, or the bus stop, or the police station seeking help to guide her. She saw staircases she had to ascend, and rivers she had to cross, boats and ferries she had to get on. She was afraid she would not make it. I tried to reassure her that she would be guided and lifted and would find her way. True to her worrying nature, she was not so sure. In the week after her death, I and a couple other family members experienced a few remarkable synchronicities involving crows, noisy, cawing, and swooping crows. And I'd like to think that these were a sign that my mom was indeed guided and has found her way into a new home, one with flight and expansion and soaring grace. May it be so. Bear with me, one more thing. I would like to read a poem by David White. He wrote this poem based on a dream after his mother died. Farewell letter for all the mothers who have passed away. She wrote me a letter after her death, and I remember a kind of happy light falling on the envelope as I sat by the rose tree on her old bench at the back door, so surprised by its arrival, wondering what she would say. Looking up before I could open it and laughing to myself in silent expectation. Dear son, it is time for me to leave you. I am afraid that the words you are used to hearing are no longer mine to give. They are gone and mingled back in the world where it is no longer in my power to be their first original author, nor their last loving bearer. You can hear motherly words of affection now only from your own mouth, and only when you speak them to those who stand motherless before you. As for me, I must forsake adulthood and be bound gladly to a new childhood. You must understand, this apprenticeship demands of me an elemental innocence from everything I ever held in my hands. I know your generous soul is well able to let me go. You will, in the end, be happy to know my God was true, and I find myself, after loving you all so long, in the wide, infinite mercy of being mothered myself. P.S. All your intuitions were true.
Such a rich feast of memories and calling out the best of, as Jim said, Marilyn's rich and complex life, full of so much life. And as we've already experienced, being asked by the family to give a remembrance of Marilyn naturally leads to poetry, because Marilyn thrived on metaphor, on layers of meaning. Like so many poets, her life was a search for the deeper meanings, the excavation of beauty from the ordinary. Marilyn did not have superficial conversations. She was dedicated to spirit and truth, and most of all, to the real. But that didn't mean she wasn't fun. As has already been said in so many ways, she had such a joyous love of life. Her laugh of surprise and the clap of her hands when something delighted her. That infectious grin, it lit up a room. And as we've already heard, and as we already know in so many ways, she was full of fierce love. Yes, for children, any and all, but mostly her children and her grandchildren. and for the long and tender love of Jim and their very rich companionship. And of course, love for the natural world in all its forms, streams and trees and flowers. Oh, flowers, rocks and moss. That was her true home, and she loved it deeply. Her relentless creativity, clay, painting, sculptures of twig and pebble and felt and fiber all sprang from these intertwined loves to express meaning and feel beauty. And to remember Marilyn is also to speak of how she carried and lived so much suffering. In body, yes, all her life, and also in heart and soul. Much of her fierceness came from the questions this suffering brought, the pain of why, and the quest to wrest some meaning from it. What I most hold in remembrance and what inspires me about Marilyn's life, her inner life, as we've heard what's so inspiring about her outer life, was to witness how Marilyn continually held a tension between these opposites, her tenacious love of life and her equally profound suffering in this life, pain and beauty, hope and despair. Carl Jung felt that being able to hold the tension of the opposites was the only path to spiritual life and truth. He wrote, "Holding the tension of opposites grows consciousness, wholeness, and soul." Holding the tension, not collapsing on either side, living in the complex mystery that one does not cancel out the other. Beauty does not cure or cancel out pain, and neither does despair erase love and grace. And it is only in this holding, this not collapsing, that something new can emerge. Soul, wholeness. It requires so much strength to hold that. It requires so much inner and outer attention to that work. It is not easy. It was not easy for Marilyn. It required so much inner and outer attention because one can and often does fall onto one side or the other. But this was Marilyn's inner focus always, soul making. The yearning to be whole, to be conscious, to be able to see and endure the terrible and the wonderful mysteries of life, and to hold them both. And in doing that, as she did all her life, she shared and offered that vision to us. In the last stanza of the Mary Oliver poem, "When Death Comes," Mary Oliver writes, "When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world." Marilyn made of her life and poured into our lives something particular, something real. And I'm grateful.
My name is Mercy Garland, and I met Marilyn when Jim and the three girls came to this church in the mid-'70s. Jenny, Kate, and I were in confirmation class together, and Marilyn was part of an incredible generation of mothers here at the church that deeply enriched my life. And one of the advantages of living in the same area for a long time is that relationships continue to grow and change, and I'm so grateful that my friendship with Marilyn continued all through my life. An early memory of Marilyn was of an all-church family retreat, and Marilyn was put in charge of our activities and games. And she led us all in what was known then as new games. And these were games that were more about cooperation rather than competition, and they were also designed to be intergenerational, so everybody in our church family and our congregation could play together. And it worked brilliantly. And there was a beauty and simplicity about those games that I didn't know then that this would become a common experience with Marilyn over the years. As you can tell by the readers and speakers before me, Marilyn was a keen observer of the natural world, and I love the picture of her on the front of the bulletin, and that's right here, Marilyn standing next to the sunflower. But I actually think of Marilyn as a tree. And I was really tickled when I read in the bio that Marilyn had said that she had wanted to be a tree. Marilyn was tall with a wonderful crown and long armed branches. We once had a whole conversation about all the important trees in our life. And even her clothes she wore had a seasonal sense to them, color and great texture. And just about every time I saw Marilyn, I had an urge to just touch what she was wearing. I don't know how to describe it, but her clothes made me feel calm. And it sounds like other people had that experience too. She was not one to email or text, but it was not uncommon to get a card in the mail or a quick phone call, many times about something small. She enjoyed the poem that you shared or the dish that you brought to the potluck. I distinctly remember one call where we talked about how we like to watch cats yawn and to see the intricacies of their mouths. Now, I have one memory of Marilyn that is so completely unlike the others. I know that Jim said that Marilyn was not a party girl, but one time a bunch of us were celebrating September birthdays, and I was the young whippersnapper in the group. I brought a bottle of tequila to do shots. And I was surprised that Marilyn was interested. She was curious about the licking of the salt, doing the shot, and sucking the lime wedge. And friends, there may or may not be a photograph of this happening. But there were witnesses. She delighted in such small things, but also in the big wide world and our place in it. A group of us would share books, and especially poems, and sometimes read them out loud to each other. And Marilyn would say, "Read it again." And she would savor it just as much the second time, sometimes adding a nod or a bow or a simple yes at the end. The fact that she noticed and appreciated such simple things made it all the more heartbreaking when those things were no longer possible. Riding her bike, swimming in the lake, or just sitting next to somebody in the pew because of her MCS. Like a tree, she weathered a lot and survived. Now, I know that the poet Mary Oliver has already showed up here in this morning's service, but you didn't really think that we were going to not have another one, did you? So I would like to share Mary Oliver's poem, When I Am Among the Trees. When I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locusts, equally the beech, the oaks, and the pines, they give off such hints of gladness, I would almost say that they save me, and daily. I am so distant from the hope of myself in which I have goodness and discernment, and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me, the trees stir in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." The light flows from their branches, and they call again. It's simple, they say, and you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine. I'm going to read that last part again. And you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine. Yes, she did shine. Even after a tree has fallen, it supports an incredible amount of life in the woods. And looking at her family and her friends, I know that this is true.
Hi. I'm Jenny, and I'm the last scheduled remembrance. We are going to open it up to people who want to come up and speak here if you have anything, or there will be a mic as well. And we also have some remembrances that people emailed to us that we may find time to read, depending how it goes. I'm kind of looking at my family for confirmation, but I think that's the plan. Everything I wrote has already been said, so I don't know what to do up here, but I'm so glad to see you all. I'm so glad you're here. I'm really glad the caregivers have been acknowledged, and I also want to acknowledge my two sisters, Kate and Cara, as caregivers who are on the ground day in, day out for the last many months and years, and I could not be more grateful for that. And the deacons, and Erin, and Michael Shapiro, and Michael, and Daniel, and Ian, the musicians over here, and the whole church community that's here. Our mom loved church. She loved the churches that came before, and she loved this church, where, as Mercy said, me and my sisters were confirmed, all of us eventually, not all in the same class, and where our parents belonged for a long time. I can see her on a Sunday putting on something a little extra nice, a silk scarf or a velvet vest, before leaving home. I can see us entering, greeting ushers, being handed programs, crossing inside to smell wood, candles, hymnals, red upholstery, coats in winter. I could picture her scanning for and seeing familiar faces, smiling, finding her pew. One always has a regular pew, right? That's just how it works, like a seat in a class. You always take the same one. Finding a pen and paper for a Nancy kid, settling in to be brought to a space in her mind and a space in the world that wasn't every day, that wasn't work, that wasn't the pushes and pulls of family life. Church, a weekly reminder of and connection to other truths, to the beauty of the earth, the glory of the skies, and as the hymn you probably recognize now goes on, to the love. Church as a place to connect to the love from which our birth over and around us lies, a weekly chance to be with all this and more together with others, a chance to be human in this very particular way. I will be forever grateful to her and to our dad for bringing us to church, and so opening for me one door of the many, many doors that there are to all of this. Sometimes you hear a voice through the door. This is the Rumi voice that's on the front of your program. Or it's not the Rumi, it's the Rumi verse, sorry, not voice. It's Rumi's voice through the verse written on the front of your program. Sometimes you hear a voice through the door calling you as a fish out of water hears the waves, or a hunting falcon hears the drums, come back, come back. This turning toward what you deeply love saves you. Lori Ferguson had told us that our mom especially loved that last line, this turning toward what you deeply love saves you, that line. She loved all of you, and so I imagine her here now, seeing all of you, all of us, among us, smiling, moved, and loved. I wanted to end by reading a version of the text that closes the biography that you got in the program. A lot of it has already been said by people, but So maybe I'll just read a little fast, but it's a partial list of the things that our mom deeply loved, and to which she turned to find joy and to be saved. She loved riding her bike, especially down by the Pearl River Railroad tracks and in the state forest on Martha's Vineyard. She loved swimming, as you've heard a lot about, especially in Lake Michigan and in Seth's and Old House Pond and Lake Tiarati and so many other places. She loved kids, as has been mentioned, her own, her grandkids, her nieces and nephews and grandnieces, the kids she worked with, and really all kids, but yeah, especially her own. She loved our dad, her husband, dear Jim, and the daily drives with him in recent years to the Piermont Pier to check in on the Hudson River's flotsam and jetsam, the people walking dogs, the boats and the ships and the birds. And I gather Kate and Pradeep and my dad drove there just the other day looking for her. She loved the way the inside of a red cabbage looks when you slice it in half. She loved the smell of sheets hung outside to dry. She loved clay, and she taught us about glazes and kilns and made gorgeous dishes, some of which I think are going to be visible in the back for those of you who don't see. I see my cousin Margie brought some things, and I think my sisters did too. She loved justice and quietly fought for it everywhere in her life. Maybe sometimes not so quietly, but usually quietly and always. She loved leaves and acorns, you've heard about this, and making things, whether pots, baskets, doll beds, bouquets of dried flowers, cookies for the kids to come home from school to. She loved sewing and fabric stores. This is one of my fondest memories of her as a kid, going through the Simplicity, Butterick, and McCall's racks for patterns for skirts and vests and pants and dresses for herself and the kids. She loved nature, the plains of the Midwest, big skies, trees. She sometimes said, as you've already read and heard, that she wanted to be a tree. She loved the sunsets at Menemsha. She loved Wendell Berry, as you've also heard, Annie Dillard and Mary Oliver. She loved card games and board games and cooking and good food. She loved good humor, toasted almond bars, best bought from the ice cream truck on a summer evening, and eaten outdoors on the steps after having had a game of catch in the street with a baseball and soft leather baseball mitts she'd saved for us from her own childhood. And she loved you, and that love will live forever.
Marilyn lived a full and rich life, and this is just glimpses of that. And so we extend the invitation if anyone would like to share a remembrance and a glimpse of who Marilyn was to you, or a memory that just sticks out so strongly. If you'd like, you can come up to here, but if not, we have a handheld microphone. You can raise your hand, and Bob, we already have someone up front. Yep, you can. Yep. Bob. Up front here.
Sorry, just to let everybody know, it turns out that
Hold.
the service is being recorded. So one thing to know is that if you want your face to appear, it only records that. But your voice should be recorded if you use the mic regardless. Okay, so to the extent you care about this, that's the deal.
Right, okay. But I don't, how does it, no, I just.
Just hold it up to.
Hold it like this? Can you hear me? Does everybody hear it?
Yes.
Closer? Oh, thank you, Cara. Oh, thanks. Okay. I'm Marjorie Cleveland, one of Marilyn's sisters. A friend who believes in universal energy and spirituality suggested I pick something special to me and attach Linny's spirit. I chose cardinals
female and male. They come to my bird feeder, and I smile when I see one or the other or both. It provides me with Linny's presence. Since knowing about the spirituality, I've included my amaryllis for my sister Carol's spirit and presence in her amaryllis was so very special to her. The 4 Cleveland siblings were born within 5 years. Carol in 1936, myself in 1937, Linny in 1939, and Rusty in 1941. The next generation spanned 3 decades. Carol had Margie in 1958 and Will in 1959. Jim and Linny's children, Jenny in 1965, Kate in 1966, and Cara in 1968. My children, Jessica in 1967 and Jillian in 1968. 5 girls in 3 years. Our mom was busy helping us out. Russ had Ben in 1975 and Beck in 1977. Some first cousins were almost 20 years apart. Will, I think, was hoping for a male cousin on his mom's side. Of course, it happened when Ben was born, but Ben was in Australia. I'll leave the next generations to our beloved grandchildren. The 4 Clevelands spent our lifetimes together as best we could. Linny and I shared our children with playdates and sleepovers for years. When they moved back from East Lansing to Pearl River, New York, and I from San Francisco, Washington, D.C., New York City to Ramsey, New Jersey. Carol, at this point, moved back from Mississippi to Piscataway, New Jersey. Our mom was very happy to have us so close to River Edge, New Jersey, where we had grown up. Linny and I spent sharing 85 years, childhood, college, marrying, children, careers. All life had to offer. I'd like to read a poem. It's written by John O'Donohue on the death of a loved one. Let us not look for you only in memory, where we would grow lonely without you. You would want us to find you in presence, beside us when beauty brightens, when kindness glows, and music echoes eternal tones. When orchids brighten the earth, darkest winter has turned to spring. May the dark grief flower with hope in every heart that loves you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Pockhelm. I am Marilyn and Jim's gardener. And I was looking at the photograph of Marilyn with the sunflower, and it reminded me of a conversation that I had with her, one of our last, and it shows you my lack of imagination. I asked her if you could be if you were a flower, what would you be? I didn't think about trees. I didn't ask. If you could be a plant, what would you be? So, wrong question. And she was baffled. So, I said that I saw her as a sunflower because she's tall, she's beaming, she's always bright, she's strong, and there's this amazing mathematical thing going on, you know, and she was a brilliant woman, I thought, and a remarkable one. So I came to know Marilyn through her garden. We shared a wonderful physical therapist, and Marilyn was looking for help with her garden. I quickly learned that we shared other interests and passions besides plants and gardens, although most of our conversations remained centered on the needs of her garden. To the best of my ability, I tried to emulate the way she cared for it. But as all gardens do, they change over time. Seeds long buried emerged and established dominance, as in the case of the new stand of rows of Sharon trees, which are all over now, which I nurtured and beat back the intrusive bamboo from next door. Marilyn allowed me to play with the slope in the backyard next to the garage, adding plants here and there, which I thought she would enjoy. And that did two things. It did bring more variety to the garden, but it also opened up paths for the bad plants coming in from next door, and brought them more into her garden. So it just created a job for me that would never end. So what had once been a carefully controlled balance of good and evil plants became a free-for-all playground where magnificent things occurred, but without a steep price to pay for the person with the gardener's eye. When I looked at Marilyn's garden, I saw so much more work to be done. What Marilyn saw, I'm pretty sure, was whatever beauty it held within itself, with or without me, although she always showed me much appreciation. I think the beauty was in the eye of the beholder. My job was just to make it a little bit more visible. Marilyn was an amazing woman, and that struck me the first time I met her. And every time we spoke, I just knew that caring for her garden was really caring for her, a direct act of love. Letting go of her garden means letting go of Marilyn, something that is really hard for me to do. And so, Jim, wherever you end up living, if you should stay in that house in Pearl River, I would still love to take care of Marilyn's garden at no cost, of course. Thanks.
I'm Jane Sherman, and I want to thank you for this beautiful service. It's been very moving. I met Marilyn here in the late 80s at Palisades, but I think we really became, we realized we were going to be close friends in that era when we were on one of the retreats that Mercy was talking about. We're in a breakout group. She was role-playing God at the burning bush. And she commanded that I take off my shoes, which I did because she was commanding. She was a person I found I had a lot in common. We shared the love of the vineyard and many other things. But at the party, actually, we were birthday sisters. We were both born on September 14th, and we enjoyed that through all the years. And at the party Mercy was talking about, the tequila party, I'd forgotten about that part. That was a celebration given by a group of women that Marilyn started. She brought a question to Lori and Mercy and me. I was at Nyack Center at the time, wanting to do a ritual of the empty chair, a ritual for women. So we pulled a group of people together to perform that ritual and explore that ritual, and that was in the early 90s, and that group is still going. And she brought many, many thoughtful questions to us and moved all of us to think deeper and to go deeper. And at that party in Pearl River, the group presented Marilyn with a beautiful woven shawl because we saw her as our wise woman. She was the one who brought us to new places so frequently. I'm not a gardener. I can't keep things going. I always marveled at Marilyn's relationship with her garden and her yard. And as I sat with her one afternoon and she was weeding, and I said, "How do you know what to pull up?" She said, "Well, if it blooms, it stays, whether it's a weed or not." And I just loved that. So I thank Marilyn for so many things, and I thank you for this day.
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz, and I am so grateful that I bumped into Cara as we were both heading towards the Barnes & Noble in Nanuet when she told me that her mom was very sick. And I tried for, I think, the last several weeks of Marilyn's life to visit her, and somehow it just never worked out. Marilyn and I met when our kids, Cara and my daughter Tanyo, attended St. Stephen's Episcopal Church, the daycare center that was there. And we became friends there and talked about how the kids probably needed something to climb on besides all the toys that were there put on the shelves. So somehow or other we thought of making a jungle gym that would be right in the room that the kids played in. And I think we designed it maybe with the help of Jim, and we made part of it at, or we designed it, I think, at Jim and Marilyn's home, and then we bought the materials and went and put it together right at the daycare center, and the kids were always coming over to help us and to be part of what we were doing for them. And it was a wonderful, soft, rounded kind of wooden plaything that they could climb on it. And it was just so great to have put this together with Marilyn. I didn't know her for very long. We didn't continue to have a long friendship like so many of you had with her. And I wish that I had, because there's so much that I've heard today that I got the sense of just in the short time that we did know each other. Mostly what I got from her was a sense of deep peace that just emanated from her, and I really enjoyed being in her company because of her kindness and her peace, which even in the short time that I was, that we spent time together, it was so obvious, and it came out in such a strong way. And later, when our kids were grown, I taught yoga at the Blauvelt meeting house, and she attended. Well, I was so surprised. She walked into my class, and I was so happy that she decided to take my yoga class. And she was very determined to do the stretches and the exercises, and it was a real blessing for me to have her there. And then we just lost touch, but I often thought of her through the years because of the peace that I felt from her, and her smile and her gentleness. She was a real gentle, peaceful soul, and I feel grateful to have been invited here. I learned so much more about her, and it's been a real high point of my day. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriella.
My name is Marquise Auguste.
And we were blessed to be a part of the care team for Miss Maryland. I'm so honored to be here to gather to honor her life of a witty, intelligent, articulate woman who welcomed me into her home and, more importantly, into her heart and to her family. She had a warmth about her that made every conversation meaningful. Every shared moment we had was, in a way, a teaching moment. Her wisdom, kindness, and unwavering spirit left a lasting impression with me, and I'm sure with everyone who had the pleasure of meeting her and knowing her. Miss Marilyn wasn't just a patient to me. She was a teacher, a guide, and in many ways an inspiration. She gave me the chance to grow and to learn and to hone to my skills as a future nurse. And more than that, she reminded me of the true essence of care, not just in medicine, but in the way we treat and uplift each other. I'm deeply grateful to have met her and have witnessed the love that was surrounded her with Kate, Cara, Jenny, Jim. Thank you all for teaching me and making me a part of your journey. I'm grateful to have been a witness to her life and to surround her and be around the beautiful love that reflected in her family and the creativity that Kate and Jenny and everyone in the life and Cara in her life brought. Her compassionate daughters, devoted husband, their strength and dedication were a testament to the incredible woman that she was. Miss Marilyn will be missed dearly. She will never be forgotten. Her laughter, her wisdom, her remarkable spirit will live on in our hearts. Thank you, Miss Marilyn, for everything. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me to the service. And Marquise wants to express herself as well.
Good morning again. My name is Marquise Auguste. In addition to what my coworker just said, I had a pleasure, really a good pleasure to work with Miss Marilyn. We call her Miss Marilyn. And she always called me Marquise. We had a good time together, and I felt so welcome when I went to her house to work. It's not just to me a workplace, it's a welcoming place, like it's my family in my house. It's just beautiful. And then she usually say thank you to me, and we have some little time together. Sometimes I share a picture of my child or my children, especially the baby when he eats apple, because I have a lot of time to do his hair, and I show Miss Marilyn a little picture of his hair. Oh, he has a lot of hair. And then she said, boy, Miss Marilyn, I'm gonna cut his hair. So I'm complaining all the time about his hair. And then I said, okay. She said, don't I cut it? I won't cut it. She said, no, you shouldn't cut his hair. And then one day, and she said to me, and one time, and then she said again, Marquise, you look healthy, but you're a little chubby. You have to lose a little weight. So we were kind of friends and talk about everything. She make me laugh and welcome me. And my pleasure when I'm feeding her most of it. And then she's there very patiently and then saying thank you to me. And I said, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to be here with you. We're friends. We were friends, and I always remember what she's telling me. Our family had to help my kids growing up and stuff like that. We have a little time together to speak when we speak about family stuff. She helped me a lot. And I'm so grateful to be around Mr. Jim, her husband, and their children, her whole family, and it's a great environment, and the love that they shown for the mom, and the husband showed for his wife and the grandchildren, and I feel so warm by that love. And thank you for having me today and speak a little word. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patricia Stark, childhood friend and neighbor. Marilyn Cleveland was a woman whose warmth, wisdom, and kindness left an indelible mark on everyone she knew, especially myself. From the time that I was 6 years old and we met while we were 3 houses down, and my mom and I walked up and brought cupcakes and walked down the long driveway, and Marilyn was standing there with Katie and Cara and Jenny and just had a big smile for us. She welcomed me into her home as if I was one of her own. She had a way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room when she asked you a question, when she listened to you, when she had a conversation with you. And she had that smile that it was contagious. You had to smile back when she smiled at you. She was soft-spoken but carried a quiet wisdom, offering a calm and reasonable perspective that always made the world seem a little less chaotic. She was endlessly creative, whether we were making and learning how to make pottery on her pottery wheel, crafting candles in the sandbox in the backyard, or baking Product 19 cookies that I'm so disappointed that Product 19 isn't made anymore, because they were amazing. She encouraged curiosity and the joy in the little things, making childhood feel just so magical. I have great memories of going to Tolman Lake Park and the pool there and talking about swimming. We heard that come up today quite a bit. At the Psych Center, we'd go to the pool there, and we'd even go to Silver Rock, and she always made us wear sneakers so that we wouldn't hurt our feet or slip. I never heard her raise her voice, even when we were literally climbing the walls. In the house, on a sleepover, we'd take off our shoes and socks and maybe have dirty feet and shimmy our way up the walls and leave marks. She always made sure that we had sunflower seeds when we wanted to warm up after going in the pool down the street and lay on the driveway on our towels on the hot driveway and warm up. She trusted me to take care of mowing the grass and cutting the bushes and feeding Motorboat, the cat that we all found in the abandoned car at the neighbor's house while they were in Martha's Vineyard. If there were times that something did go wrong or there was an argument or a disagreement, and don't remember too many, but I do remember that she would just simply communicate with us to help us understand, never judgmental, never scolding. Marilyn and her husband my parents were older, I was the youngest of 4, and they were the cool, young, hip parents that encouraged us to use their first names, Marilyn and Jim, which was just really a mind-expanding thing at the time, growing up with very old-school parents. She was the first woman that I knew that kept her maiden name, which I thought was such a cool concept, so that when I got married, I kept my maiden name as well for my professional life, and then eventually hyphenated. She showed me in such a quiet way what a woman could be, both strong and gentle and independent and deeply loving at the same time. And although distance inevitably pulled us all in different directions, her love and guidance and wisdom lives on in Katie and Jenny and Cara, and so blessed that we've still stayed friends for all of these decades. I was truly blessed to have grown up 3 houses down from this amazing woman, and although my parents sold our home in 1986, going to 51 Roosevelt Street is always going home, always. She was really a gift to us all, and we will miss her deeply, her love, her lessons that will always stay with us, and she will always be in our hearts and always part of a wonderful childhood on Roosevelt Street.
I've been deputized to read a message from Marilyn's younger brother, Bill, known to us as Rusty Cleveland. I also brought this up because I want to take a picture, so I'm going to do that before I get down, so don't be alarmed. Okay, so this is me ventriloquizing Russ, who is in Australia, where it's 3 a.m., so is probably not watching right now, but maybe, or it's probably 4 or 5 at this point, but I think we'll watch the recording, so hi. When I think my way back to our beginning, I realized that we only had about 17 years of our 80-plus together. We both went to college and got together fleetingly over summer holidays in River Edge. So inevitably, much of my physical recollection is from those early times. We started out as friendly enemies, had frequent spats, and delivered a specialized blow to the upper arm with the big finger bent. I can picture my mom doing this to us, actually, jokingly, but I can picture it, with a big finger bent into a sharp angle designed to apply maximum pain, more in ritual than anything else. We called each other Clem and Lum interchangeably. Clem from a cartoon character, Clem Kattlehofer, and Lum short for lummox. I don't know those references, but maybe some of you do. We also did a lot of dandelion control, especially on the front lawn of 127 Voris Avenue, driven in part by neighbors who would complain that their lawns would be invaded by the airborne seeds. We roller skated with strap-on skates and scootered on the Red Rattler Antique, or the posh green scooter of more recent vintage. We went, quote, exploding, especially exploring, but they called it exploding, especially at Lake Sebago in New York State, scrambling over boulders, glacial erratics, I suspect, on our picnic outings, always visited by yellow jackets. We rode our bikes endlessly, then relying on the bicycle later in life as a genuine freedom machine as our legs gave way to the ravages of time. We played badminton and blood croquet, in our spacious backyard, probably croquet, but serious, driving each other's balls through Mrs. Miles' hedge into oblivion. Linny would play catch with me as baseball came into my life. Those are the mitts, actually. They were Uncle Rusty's and my mom's. Linny would play catch with me as a baseball came into my life. Linny took off her shoes when summer came, suffering numerous bee stings, which resulted from the clover, which was everywhere in the backyard lawn. After college and a failed go at law, I reverted to Plan A, which was joining the U.S. Peace Corps and going to Malawi for 3 years. JFK was assassinated while I was in Boston. It was devastating for all of us. That was to be the beginning of what became the life of an expatriate. So we wrote to each other and telephoned at birthdays. Linny's letters were full of insight and commitment to high ideas and ideals. They were often downright inspirational on psychology, politics, people, and principles. I kept them all for many years. We did have several memorable visits, including the full family reunion in New York State and the wonderful wedding of Kate and Pradeep on the much treasured vineyard. On our most recent visit in September 2024 gave us the opportunity for Julie and I to farewell a failing Linny, and we were in company of Beck and Lizzie, their daughter and granddaughter, for the heartrending moment in time. I told Linny that she was the most courageous person I had ever known personally. She battled through a host of maladies, including from birth. She never gave up. The tyranny of distance kept us apart physically, but when we got together, we would resume the conversation from wherever we had left it the last time we'd seen each other. We were very close. I loved you, Linny. Thank you, Uncle Rusty, for sending that. While I have the pulpit, so to speak, I'm going to mention that a variety of people sent remembrances. I don't know if we'll read more of them here, but I'll mention the names and we'll have them on the table and back in case people want to look at them. So Deb Fort from Days at Rockland Children's, Ellen Cates from Childhood, Laura Kelly, governor of Kansas, as mentioned. Megan Kennedy, a childhood friend and RPS kid classmate. Mary Jane McGuire, maiden name O'Reilly, who was a neighbor who my mom babysat. Dee Pumplin, who was a neighbor in East Lansing. Gordon Smith, also a neighbor in East Lansing. They were married at the time. They both sent remembrances of starting the Paul Goodman School with our parents. And Beck Speed, who's Rusty's daughter, so our cousin. So these will all be around if people want to look at them. I'm going to take a picture, but the mic is open if anybody else wants to come up. Smile. Thank you.
There will always be more stories to tell. There's more that could be said and more that could be. Fill this room and just glimpses, again, glimpses of Marilyn's life. And so I don't want to end this time, but I want to offer an extension that you go beyond this time. That in the days and the weeks and the months, that you reach out to Jenny and Kate and Cara and Jim with these stories, with a memory that pops into your head, with a thought that just seems so fleeting and silly that you can't help but reach out. Because they're going to need that too. Those glimpses and reminders of Marilyn still here with them, with us. Please be seated. Wendell Berry writes in his book, Sabbath Poems, "The year relents and free. Of work I climb again to where the old trees wait. Time out of mind, I hear traffic on the road, engines high overhead. And then a quiet comes, a cleft in time, silence of metal moved by fire. The air holds little voices, titmice and chickadees, feeding through the treetops, among the new small leaves, calling again to mind the grace of circumstance. Sabbath economy, in which all thought is song, all labor is dance. The world is made at rest. An ease of gravity. I hear the ancient theme in low world-shaping song, sung by the falling stream. Here, where a rotting log has slowed the flow, a shelf of dark soil level laid above the tumbled stone. Roots fasten it in place. It will be here a while. What hold it here decays. A richness from above brought down is held and holds a little while in flow. Stem and leaf grow from it. At cost of death, it has a life. Thus falling founds unmaking makes the world. Unmaking makes the world, something any gardener knows. The seed has to be unmade to become the plant, the tree. The leaves have to be unmade to become the humus, the rich layer that becomes the soil. There's an unmaking that makes the world, and in a sense, there's beauty in that we see and feel and believe in the larger natural world around us, at least. It's perhaps when it hits a bit closer to home that it doesn't see or seem or feel as beautiful. It's hard to believe in beauty of the unmaking of our world at the loss of a dear loved one. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Death is hard, raw, deep, painful, sometimes agonizingly so. Grief floods over us again and again, at times in ways we least expect it. This unmaking does not at all feel like it is making our world, but rather quite the opposite. And yet this is what we hang our faith on, put our trust in as followers of Christ, the one who laid down his life for the many for love, for the making way for new life. At cost of death, it has a life. Thus falling founds, unmaking makes the world. This faith that Marilyn lived out, not necessarily in creeds or confessions, but in her daily living. The making of the world. Making way for new system of education. Making way for women not just to be safe in their own homes, but to lead and to be empowered. Making ways for a cleaner world, a healthier environment. Being an anti-nuke activist, then closer to home, pushing more education and reducing the intake of harmful chemicals in our bodies. And even in just the pottery that she made, in the garden that she tended to, in the family that she raised. In many ways, storing up treasures not on earth, but in heaven. But for Jesus, this wasn't some futuristic sense or physical space, but what he's calling those who would listen to him to is to perceive and name God's presence, to restore the earth and earthly things to their place in the order of God. That's why we pray, may God's kingdom come. It's to allow God's presence to shape our vision and our values, for that where one's treasure is, their heart will be also. Marilyn's heart was with the things of God, working towards justice, healing, wellness, and peace. She was making the world anew, living into the inbreaking kingdom of God, or as the Gospel of Matthew refers to it, the kingdom of heaven, here and now. Beloved, it's how we should all align our hearts to the presence of God. Yes, to shape our vision and values. Yes, to try and restore earthly things to their rightful place in the order of God. But I also want to highlight, especially in moments like these, to ground us in the presence of God as Emmanuel, God with us. To trust that in this season of grief, this season without Marilyn, for I do trust it is but a season until we meet again. But to trust that in this season, God is indeed with us. Our Emmanuel who came so that the world may know of God's great love. This great love, Paul reminds us in his letter to the Romans, that nothing can separate us from. Neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all of creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. And so let us hold on to this promise. The love of God with us, the presence of God surrounding us and holding us and guiding us through this season, providing us glimpses of life, reminders of Marilyn's love for us. For even though she is gone, we can continue to find comfort in the memories, the images and pictures that come to mind when her name is spoken, when stories are shared. When these memories arise, I pray you experience a wonderful feeling of love, that you might feel surrounded by Marilyn and by God's great love until we all meet again, fully welcomed into the heavenly kingdom, into the unmaking that indeed makes the world. Let us pray. God of compassion, before whom generations rise and pass away, comfort us with the great power of your love as we mourn the death of Marilyn. In our grief and confusion, lift this heavy sorrow. Help us find peace in the knowledge of your loving mercy to all your children, and give us light to guide us into the assurance of your love. We thank you for our sibling Marilyn and praise you for the gift of her life, for all in her that was good and kind and faithful. We thank you for the precious memories that will abide with us and look forward to glad reunion in life to come. Amen. Our closing hymn is Will the Circle Be Unbroken, and the lyrics are on the back of the bulletin.